Hi then, welcome to my first not so momentous occasion of a video blog, which is really just an introduction. I figured that it's sometimes quite difficult for me to sit down and type something because once my thoughts start flowing, then as some of you may have seen, it gets quite lengthy, and sometimes there's things that need to be said in 2 minutes, and I thought maybe a video would be a more effective way to do it. So over the last 3 weeks, I've been traveling between South Africa and then London, Los Angeles, and back to the UK. And part of that was to do presentations on talent identification at the invitation of the English Football Association and the English Rugby Football Union. And I thought what I would do, partly because it's one of the most fascinating topics in sports science and sports strategy, more importantly, and also partly because I'm so tired of talking about doping that I thought I would try and change the tenor of the conversation on the website, is to launch into a series on talent ID. And the start point for that is that I want to share with you the presentation that I gave at both those events that I spoke of earlier. So if you look, assuming you're on the website as you watch this, if you go down below this video, you will find that presentation. Because of time constraints, I had to cut out a few things. So for those of you watching this who are actually at either one of those events, you'll see all the slides I presented, plus a few that I had to cut out. But hopefully they make sense in the context of what you heard. And for everyone else, I know that it's sometimes difficult to follow a presentation without the creator of that speaking to you as he goes through the slides. And so what I'm going to do, and I reckon I could probably I'm not going to drag it out on purpose, but could get away with actually months of describing this presentation and all the things that have subsequently come off it. So as much as time allows me to, I will do that over the next few months, occasionally just sharing some thoughts on the whole talent ID issue. But I guess if I have to start and give you a couple of key points about this presentation, which again, just scroll down and you'll be able to watch. The first one is that we often overcomplicate talent ID, and I appreciate that once you're involved in the field as let's call you a soldier, there's a lot of stuff and there's a lot of detail and it's enormously complex. If it was easy, then no one would ever invite people like me to conferences, and certainly I'd have solved it myself. So I'm not patronizing or downplaying it, but I think that we have to start with as simple a definition as possible. And the starting point for me is that talent ID, first of all, has to be followed by management. And those two things are simply about asking the right question. And the first question to ask is, it's 2015 today. In 15 years' time, in 2030, you want, regardless of whether you're a club or a country or a professional team, you want an athlete at the age of 27, 28 to be winning you Olympic medals and world titles. By definition, that person is 13 years old today. Talent ID is about where is that person, and everything else is about what they're doing, who they're doing it with, why they're doing it, and how they're doing it. And so if you can answer those questions, that's basically what it's about. Now, the fundamental concept of talent ID is that it's not a scientific process. It's actually a strategic and tactical one. And of course, science informs how you go about doing that. But if you understand talent ID and management to be strategic, then hopefully you can appreciate that it is primarily a budgeting decision, because nobody in any sport has got infinite resources. And so given this limited pot of gold, talent ID is about identifying who you wish to spend those resources on, and then how do you spend them to be A, efficient, which means getting volume through your pathway, and B, effective, which means getting quality through your pathway. And if you understand that, then you can appreciate the other fundamental concept of talent ID and management, at least according to my thinking, which is that sometimes the best scientific thing, the scientifically prudent method, is not best in the real world. And the easiest example or analogy that I can give you of that is that let's imagine I was a nutrition scientist and I came along and I discovered that people who drink coffee or caffeine before 9 o'clock in the morning are less likely to reach the age of 70. They die younger. If I stood up and said that to you in the real world, and there were two coffee shops on opposite sides of the road, if one of them listened to me because I'm a scientist who knows what I'm talking about, and the other doesn't, in the real world, that company who listens goes out of business. And it's the same with Talent ID. So if you understand Talent ID to be a strategic, tactical, budgeting decision, then you can appreciate why things like early identification, early selection, early specialization, which most scientists would now tell you is not the best strategy for success, are still going to be done because they're driven by things like opportunity cost, fear, competition, and that's what's happening in the real world. So, whatever solution you, as a coach, a scout, a manager, a high performance strategist, is looking for, you have to respect the fact that there are inefficiencies in the system which we're aware of, but that you can't change. And so, the whole premise of this presentation is about asking you questions that are realistic, directed towards best practice, but also accepting of the fact that sometimes the best is not necessarily the best. Now, there's a lot more in this presentation. Relative age effect, why it's not all it seems, according to Malcolm Gladwell, 10,000 hours, Carol Dweck's mindset theories, Duckworth's theories about grit and resilience. I think all of those have been misapplied to the strategic aspects of Talent ID. And that's what this presentation is about. And that is what the series will be about over the next few weeks, months, who knows. We'll see how much time I can find to actually write this stuff down. If you do watch the presentation and you're intrigued and you'd like to know a little bit more, this is a punt, by the way. Drop me an email. I'll put my email address underneath it in this post. I am more than happy to attend conferences, workshops, symposia, and share some of the ideas and discuss with you some of the theories around Talent ID and management. So please let me know. Please enjoy the presentation and join me as much as my time allows over the next few months as we go into this question about Talent ID and development of future superstars in sport. Thanks a lot. Cheers.